Welcome to another episode of the Firepreneurs Podcast. Today, I have Anne Montgomery. Anne is the founder and CEO of First in Nutrition, fully involved training, and Anne was a firefighter for 8 years in Hillsborough County Fire Department in Tampa, where she reached the rank of lieutenant. So she was a fire officer before resigning and going full-time into business. I can't wait to unpack the stories here. And I should also point out to our audience who may have listened to Jonathan's episode, you are also the wife of Jonathan Montgomery, who was on a couple months ago. So we are excited to have you on, and welcome to the Firepreneurs Podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm a little nervous about people knowing that I am the other half to Jonathan, but I'll take it. It'll be okay.
Well, I don't think everybody's excited to meet the better half of Jonathan. So.
The better half. Let's go with that.
How is Jonathan? The shoulder healing okay?
He's good, man. He's almost 8 weeks out of surgery. We had a surgical consult today, and it looks like he's getting cleared to strength train. So he's awesome. He's doing well. He's being careful, not doing what he's not supposed to be doing.
Well, speaking of strength training, I follow you guys, and I mean, you're pretty strong yourself. I think I just saw you at some Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes or something. What's the story there?
Yeah, I mean, so I spent a lot of time in strength training with like powerlifting, squat, bench, deadlift, things like that. And I loved it. But it started to kind of break down my body. And when I met Jonathan, he told me, hey, I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and he had taken a break at that time. And he said, I'm going to get back to it. And I just need you to know that it's like a big part of my life. And so he started explaining about how much jiu-jitsu meant to him and how much it shaped his life to start with. So when we moved to Vero, we found out that Master Renato Tavares was here in Vero, who is just a legend in this sport. And Jonathan said, hey, you really should come and try these classes because I really think you'd like them. And we talked about it from the perspective of self-defense. I'm not a small person, right? I'm like 5'9". I'm kind of a big person. So I'm not anybody's first target, but I'm still a female. And, I have to realize that there are still males that can absolutely overtake me at any given time. So he dragged me to my first class, literally dragged. He showed me pictures, and there's people in gis, and I'm like, oh, there are all these people in pajamas, and they're rolling around, right? Like they're rolling around and they're fighting, and I don't think this is for me. And there's all these guys, but man, that first class, it was amazing. It's like chess in pajamas. It's the coolest, yeah, it's the coolest sport. And it gave me a confidence that I just didn't know I had, because you're put in this terrible, uncomfortable situation time after time after time. And you're forced to have to deal with that and to learn to breathe and to learn to calm down and to figure out your way out of those bad situations. So I'm definitely still lifting, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has taken a major role in my life for the most part. Wow.
So we just got a little sneak peek about what some of this episode is going to be about and how badass and tough Anne is. So we probably need to back up though and talk about how we got into how you and Jonathan met, how you got into the fire service. Cause I think this stuff, the BJJ and your weightlifting kind of came with the fire career, right? As you kind of got into it. So do you kind of want to walk us through how you got into firefighting and your journey there?
Yeah, absolutely. I got into firefighting by accident, actually. I went to college straight out of high school, and I thought, I'm going to go to med school. I thought I'm going to be a doctor. I grew up in a household where my dad was a physician, and I saw him take care of families and babies and older people, and I loved it. I thought, oh, this could be so great. I want to do this. Well, I spent 2 years in college in New York in the snow and realized that this was not really for me. I don't like it so much. I was sitting through 6 classes a day and hours and hours and hours on end of lecture. Something kind of snapped in my brain, and I went, I can't do this for another 10 years. I really can't. So I ended up coming back to Florida, which is where I'm from originally. And I decided, well, if I can't be a doctor and I can't go to med school, what can I do in the medical field? And I thought, well, I'll go to EMT school because it's 4 months, right? It's 4 months of my life. No big deal. I'll go ride an ambulance and see what happens. So in EMT school, we were not even a couple weeks in, and in walks the chief of the Tampa Fire Department at the time. It was Dennis Jones. He walked into our class and he tells everybody, hey, we're looking for firefighters. You're here in EMT. You can get hired right after you graduate this if you go to fire academy. And he looked at all the women and he said, you're female, you will get hired. You need to go to fire school. And that was it. That was all he said. And I was like, I say what? And he goes, you're a female, you'll get hired. That was all there was. And I was like, well, guess I'm going to go to fire school then, because why not, right? Give it a shot. And I had zero background. The fire department, I had zero background firefighting. It was really just one of those things that he said it and it kind of made sense in my head. I thought, okay, let's go give it a shot. So
along for the ride. I like it.
Yeah, man. Let's see what happens. That's kind of me. I'm kind of, real happy-go-lucky. Let's go where life takes you. Yeah, man, I went to fire school and it was so cool. I loved it. The first time they set something on fire, I was so excited. It was like kid at Christmas. Like they set the car on fire was the first fire, and I was like, oh my God, you're telling me that I get to go walk up to this thing and be next to it and I get to put it out. Like it was like, I don't know. It was the coolest thing. Something just clicked for me. And I thought it was the greatest career. So I went through fire school, graduated. And about 8 months after I graduated, I got picked up with Hillsborough County. And I was in paramedic school at the time. So that comes later on down the road. But that's how I got hired. And really, it's been the best decision I think I've ever made, because it shaped the rest of my life after that. So yeah, man, chief walking into class one day, hey, you're a woman. Hey, you'll get a job. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding that, but it was great. I loved it. And it opened up the rest of my career for me. So
I think it's really awesome that you just kind of saw that and you were, hey, what am I going to do next? I'm going to go to EMT school. What's the worst that happens? Come out 4 months and I have a certification, right? And I go get some experience, and then boom, hey, we're going to be hiring firefighters. After this, we need people. You're in here, like, come. And you're like, roger that. Sounds like a good idea. I'll go check that out for a little while. And then you go get into this career field that, is, as we know, can be fast paced. It can be, heartbreaking. It can be the ups and the downs, some of the most exciting times, the fun times. But why don't you unpack a little bit of that for us? What comes next?
So after that, I went to paramedic school while I was hired with Hillsborough County. At that time, they were giving us a time allotment. So they told you had 2 years to get through medic school, graduate. They were requiring us to be paramedics, which is fine. I loved it. I loved paramedic school just as much as EMT school. I know a lot of firefighters are not fans, but again, it was something that just kind of clicked with me. So I went through paramedic school, graduated, had fun. We did all the clinicals. And I think that was where I kind of found my love for the medical side. Mm-hmm. We went to these clinicals, and just like when they lit the car on fire, it was like they handed us these tubes and they're going, hey, have fun, innovate these people, shove this tube down there. And I was like, you're letting me do this? Like, how cool is that? So it was one of those things that same thing. It just kind of clicked over my head. And I said, man, I want to do this. I could do this. So I graduated. That's kind of where we get to meeting Jonathan. We were both already hired at Hillsborough County. And once you get through medic school, like every other department, they have their own set of protocols, right? So they want you to come in for a set amount of weeks. They run you through their protocols for paramedic on the street. Here's your SOPs. Let's see what you can do. They test you and all this. Well, the first day of paramedic orientation, I walked down to headquarters. None of us want to be there. It's 6 weeks off the street. We got to sit in the classroom, look at the books, look at PowerPoints. I walked in the first day, and I'm still a meathead at this point. I'm still going to the gym 5-6 days a week. I walked into medic orientation. I'm carrying my giant gallon jug of water. I walk in and I set it down and I look over, and Jonathan's got a giant gallon jug of water sitting right next to him. And that's no lie, man. And that's how we met. And he knew, apparently. He told me he knew that day. I said, okay.
But this is awesome for me because I get to hear the story, from both sides, independently, separate interviews. Like I remember him telling it, and it's very similar. I think actually the only thing is different was that he said he had a buddy sitting next to him that said, hey, and he's like, nope, dibs, man. I think that's the way that he told the story.
He did. He had a buddy. I don't know if he threw his name out there, so I'll leave him out of that. But he had a buddy that called dibs, and it didn't happen that way.
That's funny. That's funny. So that's where you guys met. And then, so after this point is when you guys both kind of get picked up at a department?
Yeah, so we were already picked up at Hillsborough County.
Okay.
What happens is, right, they hire you. No, you're fine. Everybody's protocols are so different across the board at every department. There's no way to keep track. Hillsborough County, you get hired. They had put us on the street as firefighters. What we couldn't do was ride the box until we had gone through orientation. So at this point, we're going through medic orientation, and then we get into those 1,944 hours that you have to spend on the box.
Man.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Just what you want to do, right? Leave the back seat and go jump on the ambulance.
For 1,944 hours.
It's a long time. It's close to a year.
Man.
Yeah.
Everybody has to do that, or is it just paramedics?
That's paramedics.
Okay. So what about the EMTs? Like, do they have to go ride the bus for a certain amount of time too?
No, they just ride backwards. So when we left, there were no EMTs on the ambulance at all.
Oh,
it was
okay.
2 paramedics, and that was it. Unless you had a student. There were no EMTs. Now it could be different. Things have changed a lot. A lot of departments are riding EMTs with a medic on a box.
Oh, okay. So you had all these hours, and you and Jonathan were doing those hours around the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we were doing the hours around the same time, and they kind of stick you at a station for your hours. I got really, really lucky throughout my entire career at the fire service. I stayed with the same crew pretty much my entire career, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah. So I ended up with my lieutenant at my station at the time that I started with when I came out of fire school. So I got super lucky to be able to stay there. But you pretty much go wherever they send you with whatever lieutenant they put you with to start checking you off.
And then you started riding the seat, right? Around this time that this lieutenant was transitioning. Is that right?
Yeah. So after your 1944, you go through a couple what they call standalone test situations. So they put you through a medical scenario and a trauma scenario. They want to make sure that you can pass under pressure. So you've got a few chiefs. They put you in a room. There's a dummy on the floor, and they roll you through a scenario to see how you'll do. Once you pass that, they give you the blessing to go and be on the rescue on the box. And at that point, you start working towards an acting lieutenant checkoff. So it's kind of like any other checkoff to act driver or to act up as captain. They've got, check boxes you have to hit. So as soon as the lieutenant you're with decides that you can make your own decisions and you can make decisions for the rest of the rookies on the box, I'll check you off. And then, you can ride that seat as an acting lieutenant. So I went through all of that. I loved it. I was scared out of my mind because they basically look at you and they're like, hey, you just graduated paramedic school. You went through 6 or 8 weeks of orientation, and now you get to be in charge of everything. All the drugs, all the equipment, patients, you get a rookie, you get a student. Now it's all on you. So that was, it was interesting and nerve-wracking in the best way, but I did eventually get acting lieutenant checked off. And from there, I took the test to be a lieutenant and ended up getting promoted.
That's so cool.
So I got my own station and my own rookie, and it was good times. I enjoyed it. I did.
I think you touched on something that, I don't know how many firefighters are like to talk about that part, but I think the first time that you are in charge of a truck, whether it's an engine or a ladder or whether it's an ambulance or whatever the case, there's those nerves, it's all, when you're on the truck and you're not the one in charge, it's one thing because you know that you got somebody there to call the shots and you're just going to go execute, right? But then when you're the person that has to, go execute on the tactics that were set from the strategy, now it's a different ball game, and so that was probably how old were you when you were going through that process?
Oh man, I must have been 25 to 27, somewhere in there. 26, 27, probably by the time I got hired and got to lieutenant. So I was, in my mind, still young.
Yeah.
I was still a baby.
Yeah, that's still young. And plus, it's funny to think about because you were in med school or thinking about being pre-med, in college for 2 years in New York. Then you're down to Florida. Then you go to an EMT class. Hey, now I'm going to be a firefighter. Hey, now I'm training to be a lieutenant. And now I'm a lieutenant. And I'm 27. I'm still young.
Yeah. It's crazy.
That was fast.
Dude. And the craziest thing is when they throw you on there by yourself, and then all of a sudden, not only now do you have a brand new rookie who has just come out of paramedic school, but you'll get a student that rides with you, and all these people, they kind of doe-eye look at you, and something happens and they just stare at you, and you're like, oh God. y'all are here to listen to me, huh? So,
Yeah.
it's tough. I think the toughest thing is that the decisions that you make are not the biggest concern. It's the decisions that they make, because now everybody's decisions are on you, right? Everybody underneath you makes decisions on their own, and you have to hope they're the right ones, or that you're there to stop them from making the wrong decisions. And it all falls back on you. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of trying to lead anybody in anything, is understanding that everything comes down to you. It's your fault, whatever happens. So that's that took a while to kind of go away and for me to get used to, for sure.
So then you get some time and you get some repetitions in doing that, and you start to build your confidence. But one thing I'd really love for you to weigh in on is, what was it like for you in like a heavily dominated male career field, ascending to a rank that's a highly coveted rank in firefighting. Lieutenant in a fire department is, one of those ranks that everybody's like gunning for, whatever your rank structure is in your department, whether it's a lieutenant or a captain. But what was it like for you leading in a heavily dominated male career field?
This is one of those topics, and it's going to be so different from department to department. We were a pretty big established department, so there were some females. I wasn't the first, on the department. I wasn't the first lieutenant by far. There's still a lot of females, but I got really lucky to start with. The crew they put me with when I started as a firefighter were the greatest guys. Now, a story, they didn't talk to me for the first 3 weeks. Yeah, because listen, I'm the new kid. First of all, I'm the new kid, so they don't know me. Second, I'm a female on a shift with no other females. There was one on another shift, but she had been there since forever. She was a long career firefighter, so they knew her. So basically nobody said anything to me. We did our job. We went to calls. There wasn't any real personal chit chat, because they want to feel you out. They kind of want to see where you stand on things. And I get that. And it's another kind of touchy subject. They kind of want to know, are you going to be super upset if they say something or make jokes? Because we kind of all know how the fire service goes, right? There's a lot of jokes. There's a lot of guys running around acting like guys. So, they were, that's the nicest way I can put it.
Yeah, that's well said. You put that well.
They were, I'm the PC half of me and Jonathan, right? So they were just real careful. And so after 3 weeks, I kept thinking, gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. Why won't they talk to me? Like, they hate me, and I have to live here every third day. And it was starting to really worry me, because I thought, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe they're just going to keep blackballing me from the station forever, and I'll never be able to talk to anybody. One day I couldn't do something. Okay, so I pretended like I couldn't do something. And I asked one of the drivers to help me start a tool. I said, I just can't get it started. Can you please come show me? Just can you help me? And he came over and he helped me start this tool. And that started a friendship. All of a sudden, it was like communicating, personal stories, getting to know people. Everybody was talking. Whatever happened that day kind of flipped the script over, and it became like, my second family. The guys were incredible. I had the same crew, the same chief, and the same captain for the majority of my time. So the guys were great. When it came to being in a leadership position, so acting driver, I think was where I got the most flack, to be honest. So going to other stations and driving the fire truck for captains that I had never met. That's the tough part. I had quite a few people, captains in elevated positions, tell me women shouldn't be on the fire service. Women shouldn't be driving fire trucks. Why are you here driving my fire truck? There were a couple statements that were made that were probably totally inappropriate. The one thing I think when I talk to women who are in the fire service or thinking about going into it is that you have to understand what you're getting into. This is a male-dominated field. It has been for a long time, and you're not going to change that the day you get there just because something said and it hurts your feelings. So it's kind of a toughen up kind of thing. If you show up, you do your job and you do it well, and you show them you're not just there to do your job, but you're there to support them in doing theirs, they will love you for it, and it will all go away. But there's definitely some growing pains. I think as a lieutenant, I actually had a better time as a lieutenant on a scene. So I didn't get much pushback from anybody at all. And I don't know if it was that position. I don't know if it was my skill set at that point, but I really didn't get any issues when I was a lieutenant on the box. It was really more acting driver and having to come on scene and either tell people what to do or tell people to move things. That seemed to be the position where I got the most pushback from crews.
I can only imagine, like, there were some, if you were looking at in a year, right, the number of days, and like thinking about it like a baseball game, where like a baseball season's long, right? There's a lot of, like, no baseball team's undefeated, right? In Major League Baseball, there's wins and losses. So I can only imagine, like, so for you going through the fire service and kind of working your way up, you're talking about the rank of driver where you're going and driving for other departments, like, there had to be some days that you felt like were just like L's. So you kind of lost on that day, right? Kind of felt like a little defeated. How did you how did you break through, like, take the loss, go home, go off shift, knowing you're going to go back into a similar environment? How did you prepare mentally to kind of step back up to the plate, so to speak?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there were definitely big days that were losses. I mean, I made just as much mistakes as anybody else. The first time I went to put the truck into gear and get the pumper going, I did something wrong and I grinded my way all the way to that pumper. It was ugly. It was ugly. And my captain just shook his head. Just shook his head and walked away. He didn't want anything to do with me. And that one sticks out. That was a day that he just, you get the disappointed face, shakes the head, walks away from you. Didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. Like, that was a day. I think on days that you feel like that, you really kind of have to know yourself. I am a super kind of introverted, quiet person. So I'm not the person that'll come home scream and yelling and cursing and whatever. But the downside to that is I stay in my own head for a really long time and I beat myself up over things for, a long time. So days later, I'm still beating myself up for not doing this right, not doing that right. You got to stop the cycle because we are really our own worst critics. And as you start to do things wrong and you play things back in your head, I feel like we tend to exaggerate either what actually happened or the impact that it had, right? Things seem so much worse when you play them back in your head than likely they actually were. So for me, it's kind of like I have to sit and go, you know what? Listen, it's done. What's done is done. I can't change it. If I go back with my tail between my legs, I'm going to just make another mistake and I'm going to look like a big baby. And they're going to look at me like I can't, for lack of a better term, man up and do my job, which was, my biggest fear being a female in the fire service is that anyone would ever look at me and think she can't do the job. We can't trust her. We can't trust her to have a hard day or to be able to help us when we need her. So for me, it was kind of stopping that self-talk and stopping that negative cycle of replaying things over and over and over, because it's just going to perpetuate it. It's not going to make it better. It's not going to change what happened. And it's certainly not going to put you in the right mindset to go back and do a better job the next day. So that's it for me is stopping it and moving forward in the best way. Because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to do my job. And that's kind of the touch of death, for a female at the fire department.
I think the way you laid that out is exactly right. I mean, the way I describe it in a parallel situation is like, it feels like sometimes you can spiral where it's like down and sloping down. And if you allow yourself to keep sliding, it's just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So like, I think it's almost like you have to put your arms out and legs out and stop on that spiral, right? And climb back up, and I think the fact that, you ended up being promoted to lieutenant, it was evidence that you did that. And I think it had to be hard work at times, had to be lonely work at times, but it's a pretty admirable career that you made for yourself over 8 years. So that's awesome. I want to pivot to your entrepreneurial side, because at some point, I assume during the firefighting journey, you also decided, you know what, this wasn't hard enough for me, being a female firefighter and then becoming an officer in the fire department. I need to do something hard again. So I'm going to go and put myself through the torture and pain of being an entrepreneur. So at what point did you start turning on the business side of your brain and start conspiring with Jonathan to put together what's now First in Nutrition, and then what became fully involved training? Kind of walk us through that thought process.
Yeah. So First in Nutrition and this whole family and company came from the fact that we were in such a bad place, the fire department. And that's, we as in me and Jonathan, the fire department is notorious for food, right? We use food for everything. We have, man, you have a great call, you celebrate, have some food. You have a bad call, have some food, right? I had a captain and a chief who were Cuban and Puerto Rican. So every time we'd come back from late night fires, late night calls, you sit down at the table. And I remember this one night, we had the longest fire. We sat down to an entire box of Maria cookies and cream cheese and guava paste. And we killed. This was my first introduction to guava paste. And I was like, God, this is really good. It's awesome. But now carry that over, 7-8 years. And it's like, I've eaten my way to being in not such a healthy place. I had gained quite a bit. I'd gained, 20, 30 pounds. Jonathan had put on some weight during the fire department. It's just the eating habits, everything that relates to emotions and feelings, we take out in food. And it seems to be that way when we go home. We don't deal with our emotions and feelings. Well, we eat, we drink, we do those things, and it catches up eventually. And it definitely did for us. So we had found a training coach for lifting, and he said, hey, I got this guy who does nutrition. And I thought, why not? The funny thing is, Jonathan kind of snuck this one in on me. I got started on food because I didn't think too much of where I was at. I was happy. I was eating. I could do my job. I felt good. I was strong. I was clearly overweight, but I didn't really see it that way. So in all of Jonathan's wisdom, he came to me in the kitchen one day and he was like, hey, I think we should try to tighten up our food. I think we should try to eat better. I found out years later, he didn't mean we. What he meant was I should try to tighten up my food. And he was telling me to try to lose weight, but to be nice, he took the PC way out and said we should. So that kind of started our foray into food. But we got into nutrition and started doing the tracking thing and started paying attention to our food. And the difference that it made was just incredible. We made physical changes so quickly, and it made a difference in our job. Our performance got better. I was heavier at that time. And that pack, 60, 70 pounds by the time you're loaded down with all your gear in your pack, add that to somebody's body weight. Was I going to be able to pull someone out of a fire in the shape that I was in at that point? No, probably not, to be honest. I don't know that I could have. So when we took the weight off, we started kind of feeling better, moving better, performing better. I realized that I was doing my job in a more effective way. And that if someone needed me to be there for them physically, I could do that for them. Not only that, they're not having to drag my extra 30 pounds out of somewhere. If I get stuck, if I call a mayday, if I'm down, if I'm lost, if I'm hurt, I'm not making it harder on them. So it was kind of a light bulb went on. Like, hey, I started this because I thought I want to lose a little weight. I want to look better. But what it turned into was I want to perform better, and I want to make my job easier and your job easier, because it shouldn't have to be any harder. It's hard enough. So that kind of was the light switch where we went, we could do this. We should help other people start to get healthier. Jonathan started doing nutrition before I did. So he started at the fire department. He started helping guys that were on his crew, guys that were his friends. He was just trying to make an impact somewhere. So he had started first, and kind of just like with fire school, I kind of just went along for the ride initially, honestly. I was not the one that was like, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I had no idea about any of it in the very beginning. It really wasn't something that I had ever even thought about. But fast forward to, a little bit later, and Jonathan is now meeting in Vero Beach, which is where we live. So we were in Tampa, which is the west coast of Florida. He tells me, hey, we're going to go out to the east coast of Florida because I'm giving a seminar on food. I said, okay, well, let's go. So go out to the seminar on food, and the guys hand Jonathan a Sharpie and tell him, here's a whiteboard, here's a marker. go. And he stands up there and he gives this food talk about nutrition and how to eat and how to track and how it can change your life, to just all these people sitting in a gym watching him. And that was kind of how it started in Vero Beach. Man, from there, it was tough. We stayed at the fire department while he kind of built up his nutrition side of things. So we were pulling 80-hour, 100-hour weeks, going back, doing shift work on the weekends at the fire department, coming back out to Vero to work during the week out in Vero. He was doing food for people out here, and I was working as a personal trainer in the gym that was connected to the guys he was doing food with. So we did that for several months before we realized that it was just exhausting and that food was really where we could make an impact. He had started seeing some of the guys on the job that he was working with making massive changes, lots of weight loss, but lots of, I don't have to take medications anymore. I am not coming out of fires with high blood pressure anymore. I can bend down and touch my toes now. I mean, there are some people that probably can't bend down and touch their toes or run up a flight of stairs, and those are the kind of things that we wanted to try to help people with, especially people in the fire service, in law enforcement, in military. These people are here to help others, but they're not helping themselves. And they're doing themselves a disservice, their crew a disservice. It wasn't okay. The culture surrounding, let's just eat away our feelings was turning into, early deaths and really sad situations. So that's how kind of First In started is we thought what we did for ourselves could really change the lives of people in the fire service, in law enforcement, in military. We thought, man, we're just two little firefighters from Tampa. We're nobody special, right? Like, we're just people. If we can do it, they can absolutely do it. And maybe we should try to make this a goal. And so First In Nutrition kind of was born from, how can we help the most people get better?
Yeah.
That's really it,
And I think it's powerful too, is like I've got I know you and Jonathan can relate to this as well, but I've seen both, what you're describing where, the fire service, we eat, right? The key to our happiness is through the belly, right? So we eat around the dinner table. We solve the world's problems around the dinner table, breakfast table, whatever, right? We get scrambles on the weekends. We have Sunday fun day on football days, So we eat food, right? And then, it's funny because as an entrepreneur, once I left the fire service and went full time in my business, I've worked with a lot of alongside or I've coached or mentored and worked with other entrepreneurs, and that same reaction to like a stressful day is there too. It's just a different paradigm in terms of time. Like, you're not coming back after a late night call. You're coming home after a long day of stress and feeling like you're just getting slammed the whole time, right? And what do you do in that scenario is you go to something that makes you happy, gives you that dopamine hit, and it's that favorite meal or it's that carry out on the way home. And so I think what you guys are unpacking is something that's not just beneficial to the fire department community. I think it's something that's just beneficial to like high stress careers or high stress professions, trying to find something to substitute, the food for, when you're having a stressful day, like what can you do instead? So what in that journey, have you guys worked with people outside of just the fire department community on First In Nutrition?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website clearly is geared towards firefighters, military, law enforcement, their families. We have a lot of families of first responders in the group. And we tell everybody, as long as you're a supporter, you're fine. If you are a supporter and you want to make change, we are happy to help you. We're here to help you. I like to tell people, hey, if you really don't like cops, we're probably not for you. Like we have quite a few firefighters and law enforcement, military, but we have got all of their spouses, their families, their moms or dads, people that said, oh, I support my cousin twice removed who's a firefighter for some department. The point was never to just strictly be with first responders. That's the population that we can relate the closest to, right, and we feel the most connection to from where we've been. But just helping good people do good things and helping people live better lives, the lives that they deserve to live, that's really the goal. And it sounds so simple, but what it comes down to is, the information's all out there.
Yeah.
We all know what to do, right? Eat less, move more, save money, invest wisely, right? We should all be millionaires by now, but it never seems to work out that way because putting it into practice is the hard part. Finding the accountability and support you need and actually figuring out how to put that information to use for you, for your life. That's usually the tricky part. And that's what we like to help people with the most, is finding their path and finding what works for them. So no, absolutely doesn't have to be firefighters, law enforcement, first responders, not at all. We're here to help anybody who wants to help themselves.
I love it. Okay. 2-part question. So you've got, and I want to get more into, first in and fully involved as well, but I want to look back at both journeys. So what would be the biggest takeaway or learning moment that you would pass on to an aspiring firefighter? Could be just a firefighter in general, or even a female firefighter, if you wanted to give unique advice there. And then the follow-up would be same paradigm, same question, but for an entrepreneur.
Okay. So, well, we can do both. For any firefighter in general, honestly, if you are an aspiring firefighter and you feel like this is your calling, this is what you want to do, when you get on the job, talk less, listen more.
Oh, boom.
That's it. And I will tell the females the same thing. Somebody told me when I got on the job, they said, shut your mouth and do your job. That's it. If you shut your mouth, do your job and do it well or better than everybody else, you're going to win. That's all there is to it. Just be quiet. Listen and do your job, man. So that's across the board for firefighters, female or not. That's the way I'd go for sure.
I dig it. That's like the whole Coach Saban. He used to do this at his Alabama football conference. It says you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. That means you should listen twice as much.
Exactly.
It's good advice.
Exactly. Yep. As far as an entrepreneur getting into that field, the hardest thing so far, I think for me, has been to really take ownership of my actions and of basically everything in the company. So it's kind of like, it's the same as being in the leader role in the fire department. Your actions dictate what everybody else does, but you also have to realize that their actions are coming from you. So if you are leading people and they are making decisions that might not be correct or that put you in a bad position, it's your fault.
Well
it's
said.
your fault because it came from you. They were trained by you. If they're directly underneath you, it came from you. And for me, learning to kind of take that ownership has been really tough. But I would say learn to take ownership of everything, because it is all on you. If you're an entrepreneur, that doesn't mean you have to do everything, doesn't mean you don't have help. You don't delegate. We have 6 coaches that we delegate to, and I trust them, but you're the leader and it comes down to you. So you need to take ownership of everything that happens as being your fault, and then figure out what you can do to fix it from there, because that's your job.
And nailing it. I mean, on the firefighter question, right? Just listen and act, right? Do work with your actions, and on the entrepreneur side, own it. I love it. Those are 2 really good, simple pieces of advice. I echo those 100%. Those are really well said. I think, especially as an entrepreneur, I mean, even think about it like as a firepreneur, right? Maybe you were still a firefighter while you were becoming an entrepreneur, like applying both of those, the dichotomy. On the one day at the firehouse, you might be in a role where you have to listen, and then over here, you have to lead with your actions, but owning those actions. I think that's really well said.
I think, I got to give a lot of credit to Jonathan for that too. I know that's painful to say, right? Give him a lot of credit for that one. Well, because he is the absolute king of owning his actions and going, you know what, that's on me. That's on me. And it took me a while to understand that. But once you do, man, it's all on you. It's on you. You're responsible for all of this.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we'll give him some credit. I think he dropped some bombs for us on the first one. So we're going to give you the credit today. How about that?
All right, I'll take it.
So along these lines, then, when you find yourself in these tough moments where, because I can relate to that. I can relate to it on both sides. I can relate to it at a time where something happened and I didn't own it, and the mistake that I made was like trying to like not blame myself. Like, well, this should have happened this way. And it's like those quiet moments when you reflect back on it, when the thing is over and you're at home and you're like, that didn't go well. Why didn't it go well? And then you have that moment where like, it didn't go well because of me, but you handled it poorly in the moment. Right. And so then you go back, step back up to the plate the next day to try to get better. And then you realize that you got to own it. You know, that's not always an easy conversation to have. And some people never have the latter conversation, you know? So I think it's great advice for an entrepreneur and a firepreneur as well. But okay, so I have another question for you. Both of these career fields are high pressure. Firefighting, being an entrepreneur, you were in a position where you weren't just a firefighter, you were also a lieutenant, so you're calling the shots. You know, so you got to be the people are waiting for you to make you got that doe-eyed look, as you said, right? You got the rookie that's looking to you to call the shots, right? So when you think about that, it would be easy to come overwhelmed, especially maybe in the first days of that journey, either as a lieutenant or even as an entrepreneur. You know, so when you found yourself feeling like overwhelmed or unfocused, or maybe you've lost focus temporarily, like, you know, what would you do? And what would be questions that you would ask yourself to kind of coach yourself through it? Like, can you walk us through maybe some scenarios where that happened?
Yeah, for sure. So I naturally I get real anxious real easy. And it's just a sense of overwhelm. You know, this is happening, that's happening. All of these things come crashing down at you once, and then you don't know what to look at or what to focus on, because whether you're on, you know, a fire scene and you have this person yelling at you and this person yelling at you and the patient's screaming and the family's yelling at you, you know, whatever it is, you're an entrepreneur and you have 3 coaches talking to you, you got a member yelling at you, you got your business partner over there having a meltdown. There's always a million things going on. I tend to try to stop and just take a step back. So I get certain triggers when I get overwhelmed, and they are very clearly physical triggers. I get like that racing kind of heart, kind of like my face flushes up and I get real hot. And I thought that's my trigger. So I started trying to kind of pay attention to that. So the first thing I try to do is catch myself. If I get so overwhelmed or stressed, or there's a situation I just don't know what to do right that second, if I can feel that kind of trigger start and stop and go, okay, wait, we're getting too far, take a step back, whether that means I go and I leave the room or I walk away from whatever it is, or I just take a second and breathe. I have to kind of tunnel in on what's the right thing right now. What is the one next right thing I can do? And then I'll go from there, because there's always a one right next step. It could be maybe I go and deal with the patient first because the patient's dying. I don't care who else is yelling at me. That's the first right next thing. I'll do that first. Or in an entrepreneurial scenario, okay, you got 3 people yelling at you, you got an email freaking out, you got your business partner melting down. What is the first right thing that I can do? And that's it, just one. If I can pick one thing and then progress from there and take it one at a time, that seems to be the best way for me to at least personally control my overwhelm and get focused again. So it's really about catching it for me. It's kind of like going down that spiral. We talked about going down a spiral before. You go too far down that hole, that climb out is going to be real tough, and you may not climb back out for a long time. So if I can stop the overwhelm when I start to feel that it's coming on, it kind of lets me take a step back and just go, okay, I can only do one thing at a time. So let's pick the one right thing right now. And that will probably lead to the next right thing and the next right thing. And it'll kind of go in order, because you can't deal with it all at once. You just can't. You know, you have to focus on what you can do right that second.
I like that. I like that. Thing's well said. One of the pieces of advice I give, you know, because being an entrepreneur is a lot of it's a head game. You know, people who own businesses, they find themselves, that's why the statistics are so poor for the first 5 years or the first 10 years of businesses just going out of business. And, you know, I have a really simple but kind of funny piece of advice that I've learned over the last 10 years is like, you know, there's those days where you feel like that's it, I'm done, you know, I'm selling the business or I'm going to do whatever. And people like emotionally react, you know, or I'm shutting it down, I'm going to do something else. And the funny piece of advice that I give to people in that is just go to sleep. Like, go to bed, man. Like, you know, this day, you know, you got to, sometimes there's going to be some L's. And today, go to bed. And typically what happens is you wake up the next day, and even it may not have been a great night's sleep, but you're ready to get back after it, you know. And I think that that's kind of a reflection of like we sometimes are compounding the pressure in our head, you know. And I think what your advice there was really well said, which do the next right thing, and maybe it will relieve some of that pressure. And then the next right thing isn't as intense as the first, figuring out what the first one was. I think that's a really good, helpful, tactical advice.
I like that. Go to sleep. Go sleep on it.
Go to
sleep
bed.
on it. See if it's better in the morning. Go to bed. I like it. I'm going to use that. I'm going to go to bed in the middle of the day and tell Jonathan, I was told I could go to bed. I'm going to bed.
You know what? It might work. I don't know. Maybe the middle of the day it'll work too. But it's just funny because that's what happens. I feel like our brains sometimes just compound and they just make it ring so much louder. And so anything we can do to quiet the crazy inside, Yeah. So I got another question for you. Somebody who's aspiring to be a female firefighter, or somebody who's thinking about starting a woman-owned business, and they're going into, again, more heavily male-dominated career fields. The odds are stacked against them, right? They can't do it, right? Or can they? And if they can, what would you say to them?
This may end up being a little bit of a controversial answer, but if I were to talk to somebody, female firefighter or female entrepreneur, probably the first thing I'd say is, hey, don't go into this thinking I'm a female going into a male dominated field. I think you set yourself up to be in a headspace that's not going to do you any favors. Yes, you're going to have struggles. Yes, it might be male dominated. Yeah, they might give you a lot of crap on the way up. But I would try to go into it thinking, this is the career I want. This is the job I want. This is the passion I have. And I'm going to do the best job that I possibly can at it. And I'm going to blow it out of the water. I think that if you set yourself up in a mindset and you get locked into this female firefighter, female entrepreneur mindset, you're kind of already worrying. You're already setting yourself up for a little bit of anxiety because you're already stressing about, for a female firefighter, well, what are the guys going to think of me? And is somebody going to say something to me? And what do I do if they do say something, or they don't like me, or they make fun of me? Or you're already setting yourself up to worry about that stuff. When if you would just go in thinking, I'm going to be the best damn firefighter that I can, and I'm going to do this job better than anybody else, it's likely not going to be an issue for the most part. Female entrepreneurs, I think it's the same thing. I mean, I think it's awesome that there are so many female entrepreneurs. I think there could probably be a lot more. If this is your drive and your passion, and you believe in something so deeply that you want to commit your life to this career, because let's be honest, owning a business, running a business, you're giving your life to it. It's a job. And you have to really love the reason that you want to do it. And if that's big enough for you to want to start this career, this entrepreneur, go into it just thinking, this is my passion. I can help people, and I'm going to help people. I'm going to do the best that I can, run the best company that I can. For us, it's to have the best family of people that we can. Go into it with kind of just a more open mindset, as opposed to already going in, setting yourself up to worry about problems before they happen.
Dropping bombs today. I love it. You know what? That advice is so spot on. I recently saw I can't remember if it was a magazine cover, and I'm not crediting the person. So, whoever, if they hear this, I'm sorry. But she said that she was already running I want to say $10 to $100 million a year company. So has reached this level of success. And she said, stop calling me a mompreneur. Stop calling me a female entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur. And I think that your advice is that same general thing. Like, you're an entrepreneur, go be an entrepreneur. You're a firefighter, go be a firefighter. I think that's the advice that people need to hear, and I think it's really well said. So, nailing it.
We had that conversation in the fire service, because people look at you and they go, oh, there's kids, and they'll go, oh, mommy, fireman. And they'll go, oh, no, firewoman. And, I'm one of those people that's like, I don't care. Listen, fireman, firewoman, firefighter, well, whatever you want to call me is fine. I love my job. I do it for a reason. It's cool. I understand where a lot of the issue is coming from. When people want to be classified as female firefighter, female entrepreneur, I think it's awesome, but I do think it sets you up to have a lot more struggles than you probably need, whether it's in the fire service or in the business world.
I dig it. Tough as nails. I love it, Ann. So let's get into, I'm going to ask some general personal questions if I can.
Yeah.
So You've got such a strong mindset. I'd like to kind of learn a little bit more about maybe some things that you do to sharpen the axe. How are you pursuing growth? What are some books that you read or have drawn the most value from, or maybe that you even give as a gift? Give me one or two, 3 books, something like that.
So I have been, Jonathan, actually, again, giving credit where it's due, right? He got me started a lot on reading, just reading in general, as far as improving. I don't want to say the biggest go-getter when it came to self-improvement when we met, but I was kind of the typical happy-go-lucky, like, I got my job, I'm happy, I love it, it's great. And, I was kind of just living life. And he goes, hey, what are you doing to get better? Like, are you doing anything to improve? I see you in the gym and I see you study at work, but what are you doing on a personal level? And I kind of had to go, nothing. So I started getting some books. I've read Atomic Habits was good. Tiny Habits was even better. I like those kind of books that kind of lay out plans in small chunks for me. Most recently, he has gotten me into Jocko Willing's podcast.
Now you're talking my language.
Yeah. So I have been listening to the Jocko podcast, and I think he's talking us into going to one of the muster leadership conferences. So awesome. He's ingratiating me in that. But man, you want to talk about a guy who is passionate about owning everything. I mean, that it blew me away. So right now, that is absolutely the podcast that I'm listening to. I would much rather listen than read. I think Jonathan would rather read.
Okay. He's a page turner.
He's a page turner.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that I can sit down and I read and I focus for a little bit, but I am not super great at blocking out the outside to read for long periods of time. I would much rather just put them in my headphones and take them on a walk with me, go on a run, hang out in the house, be able to look around and do things while I'm listening to what's happening. For whatever reason, it works better for me, which is one of the things that took me a very long time to figure out, because he was harping on me for a long time about, what did you read today? What did you like? What are we reading next? When I figured out that I enjoy listening to things more, it made more sense to me. And it made it a lot easier to want to listen to podcasts. So currently, that's what I'm listening to. And there is an endless supply of them. Yeah. As far as Jocko's podcast go right now.
Yeah, he's got quite a few out, and then he's got his books are really good. And I am similar in that I can read a book, I can turn the pages. It has to be a concerted effort for the most part. Because my day to day is so busy now, but I can always find time to listen to an audiobook or listen to a podcast and extract knowledge. And so, I think it's whatever the medium is, as long as that's whatever that medium is, it's where you're going to draw the most value from it, whether it's reading it or whether it's listening to it. I think whatever one works for each person, right?
Yeah, I agree. And there's kind of a stigma, with entrepreneurs. It's like, well, what books are you reading? Who's reading what books? And in my brain, I was kind of like, well, does it have to be books? Why does it have to be books? Can I listen to it? Because I'm really not.
No, you can't.
I'm not the typical, right? It's not the same. I'm not the typical entrepreneur, right? I didn't start out to be a business owner. I fell into it and then fell in love with it as we built First in Nutrition. And I'm slowly finding more and more roles in the business that I love, that I want to take part of and be in charge of. But yeah, that was funny. I thought, man, are they telling me that I have to read? I can't listen to it. It's the same thing. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
You think so? I know that you and Jonathan went into First in Nutrition together, and then you kind of found your path, which was kind of spending more time with fully involved training. So now you're doing more of the personal training side. Do you think that desire to go and kind of head something up separately, because they're brother companies or sister companies, but they're separate, right? Yeah. Did that come from your confidence, going into First in Nutrition, or was it something that was you more just chasing another passion?
It definitely came from once we started First in Nutrition, and I kind of got a feel for, okay, we are going to be doing this together, because we started doing live calls a couple times a week in the group, and we did it together. The first time he did a live call, he did it without me. And somebody had said, well, where's Anne? And so all of a sudden it became, and then he tells me, hey, you're going to have to be on the next one. And I'm still that kind of, I don't want to be in the spotlight. I didn't want to be on camera in front of people, even though these were our people. It was, I'm the introvert of the two of us, but he got me on one of the lives, and it was the coolest thing to be able to see our people, to interact with them. And I kind of started getting like, okay, I want more involvement in this. And as First in Nutrition grew, and we started thinking about how do we branch into training? Because nutrition is usually tied in with training in some form. People think food and they think training, right? So I have a personal trainer background. When I got out of the fire service, I got my personal trainer certification, and I trained in a gym for several years locally here in Vero. And then when I left the gym, I started training online. So I do online training. And we kept thinking, how can I take my online training and give it to our group training kind of people? Because I clearly can't personally train everybody in our family, right? There's just too many. I can't handle it. But they could benefit from some kind of group scenario. So we were starting to try to figure out how we could create a separate company or a separate business that was still part of First In, but kind of as a sister company. So we opened up Fully Involved Training on a separate Facebook page. We opened it up only to our First In family. So only people that were members of First In Nutrition were allowed in the group initially, so that we could kind of beta test it, get some feedback, use people that we knew, that we trusted. And it's basically group programming with the idea of progression. There are not a lot of group trainings that want to actually make progress. And it's basically a training versus exercise scenario. So exercise is what I would call funsies. So you went out and jump rope today, or you went out and they programmed, I'm going to use the word WOD. I'm apologizing ahead of time to CrossFitters, but you went out and did this program WOD today. You did a different one tomorrow and a different one the next day. Training is more structured. So training is the same movements, the same patterns, the same kind of rep scheme, weight scheme over and over and over, week after week. And it adjusts small increments to see where you're making progress. So training is kind of that stuff where you're like, it's kind of boring. Kind of been doing this for a while and doing the same movements. But that is where you make progress. If you're really looking to make progress in weightlifting, building muscle, changing your shape, that's where progress comes from. So I wanted to make a group program that allowed people to actually make measurable progress. So yeah, Fully Involved Training was born. We started their own Facebook page, and I program workouts basically every week, 6 days a week. There's a workout. It's either cardio, strength, hypertrophy, whatever the phase is that we are in. We address all three of them. And so it's going really well. People are seeing massive changes, and I'm super excited as a personal trainer that can't reach out and touch all of these people personally. Watching them in this group, watching women get pull-ups, watching women master even push-ups, and guys talking about, I was a runner who never lifted. Now I lift. Now I'm a better runner. Firefighters in there that are doing it on the job, in the gym, at the station, in their downtime. It's turned into something really, really cool for me.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to end with, I got one more question that I want to ask, and I'm stealing a version of this from Tim Ferriss, which is, he has a question about if you had a billboard and you could put one thing on it or one phrase or whatever the case may be. So maybe in your world, since you're virtual, right, maybe this is an email or a text message you could send out to your clients or anybody listening to this. What would be a piece of advice, or maybe like something that you would say that you would want everybody to see?
Oh man, there are so many things that we could put on this billboard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm putting you on the spot. Nailed it, right?
You are, and that's nailed it. I think mine's gonna be, and you're gonna laugh because this is gonna reflect kind of who I am. Like, I think this is a billboard, and there's like a little subset to it. So my billboard honestly would say, "Be a good person," and underneath that, honestly, so it's kind of be a good person, not just to others, but to yourself. Because that's kind of where we built First In from. That's where First In Nutrition came from, is trying to be a good person to yourself and taking care of yourself the way that you deserve is the foundation of what we do. That's what we want to help people do, is just take care of yourself and be good to yourself. So I think I would definitely be a good person.
I love that. Be a good person, subset. Also be a good person to yourself.
Yeah.
Give yourself a break every now and then, right? That's
yes.
Good. That's good. I like that. And I really appreciate you taking the time. I think that your story is awesome. I love all the ways that our conversation went today. Lots of good advice. But if somebody was listening to this and they drew inspiration from it, or would love to just connect with you and maybe learn more about how they can either work with you and Jonathan on First In or fully involved training, or just maybe get somebody who's aspiring firefighters listening to you might have questions, how could somebody reach out to you and connect with you?
So if you're looking for more information about First In Nutrition, you're looking for firstinnutrition.com. That's our website. If you want to connect with me personally, which I absolutely would tell anybody to, I'm super open and willing to talk to anybody about anything. So if you want to reach out to me, totally fine. On Facebook, it's Anne Montgomery. On Instagram, it's amfit7913. And reach out to me. You can also get to me from the email at firstinnutrition.com. So any way you like, I'm here to help and answer any questions. And I don't have it all figured out or anywhere close to it, but happy to help anybody who's starting on either the fire side or the entrepreneur side, female or not. So yeah, reach out if anybody ever wants to.
You definitely have got some experience overcoming obstacles, and your story is super inspirational. So thank you for coming on and representing the better half from the First In Nutrition family. But send Jonathan our best, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Firepreneurs Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, we please ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel or consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast outlet. Take care, everybody.